Well, hello there. You know who I am. I am Dennis Watling from the West Ham Way. I am joined by Bill West, Jeff Wilkinson, and Supersonic Mark, who's had a bit of a rebrand. What can we say? But we're back, boys. It's been a few months. It's been a scary few months, but we're back on. How does it feel to be back?
Yeah, great, man. It feels great to see you guys and start recording videos on West Ham again. It's great.
Yeah, agree with Bill. There, it's great to be back on, and looking forward to tonight's show and chatting all things West Ham.
Yes, I concur, and hopefully we can get plenty of shows in this season and sort of grow the viewership a bit, and we should have some fun along the way, I think, chaps.
Yeah, it's going to be another big season for us, hopefully. So. Obviously, all the talk at the minute is the transfer window because it did believe it officially opened yesterday. I heard that on about 1,000,001 Twitter accounts. So my first question for all of us tonight is, what position should we prioritize? Like, we know we need a lot of players. We know we need a lot of strength and depth. But which position for you is going to be our most vital to fill this summer? I'll start with Bill on this one.
As you say, I think there's a few positions we need to get players in, or either first team quality or as backups. Obviously, a few players out of contract now have left the club, or have sort of retired in Mark Noble's case. But I think for me, it's a striker, a centre forward, natural centre forward. Whether it's to push Mikel Antonio for a starting place or just have him as a useful backup option. I think the lack of a alternative sort of natural striker really, I think, cost us towards the latter end of last season, obviously with our Europa League run and obviously in the Premier League as well. So if we did have maybe even if it was just someone on loan, I'd be okay with that as well. But yeah, I think that ultimately, I think that was one of the reasons that cost us in the end towards the end of last season. So I think for me, obviously centre midfield is another one, but I think for me, getting a striker to help the workload and just provide a real attacking threat. Obviously, I think a striker is the one for me.
Mark, would you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think Bill's right really about the centre forward position. I think that's that did have a massive impact on where we finished up in the end, and I think it was clear to everyone that obviously Antonio was dead on his feet for most of the games in that sort of final quarter of the season. But to repeat basically what Bill said, I'm going to say central midfield. Obviously, at the moment, we've only really got Rice and obviously Souček as the two sort of senior and sort of like natural sort of central midfield players, really. Obviously, Noble retiring and I mean, Alex Crow, I heard the other day that he played about a minute of Premier League football last year. And
as much as that?
Yeah, as much as that. Apparently, he attempted 2 passes and didn't complete either of them. So, I mean, I think that's the pecking order he was in Moyes' eyes. So,
yeah.
I think there's, debate. You could say, well, Lanzini could play there. Obviously, we saw that a few times last year as sort of a deep-lying playmaker, which I wouldn't be against if that was to become a sort of a permanent thing if we were going to go more of a 4-3-3 tactic. And again, sort of same as well with Fornals in there. But I think, we definitely need one, potentially 2 central midfield players. I think a lot will depend on whether or not if Moyes considers Connor Coventry. I believe he had a good loan spell. Whether or not if he feels that he's ready to make that jump from, I think was it MK Dons, I think so, from League One up to the Premier League. That's quite a big jump. But as I say, it sounds like he had rave reviews. So I think that has got to be another area because obviously there's rumours about Souček, whether or not if he's going to stay or not. Him and Moyes have had a falling out allegedly over this contract situation. So we clearly need at least another body in there and potentially 2.
I agree. Again, it would be typical West Ham, wouldn't it, for us to worry so much about losing Rice, or the media would have us worry so much about losing Rice and end up losing Souček. That would just be peak West Ham. Jeff, any different? Would you agree with one of Mark or Worker on the most position, or do you have another position you think is more essential to fill?
Well, obviously, I think it's clear that striking options are is an essential spot that we need to work on. I mean, and we don't just need one striker. We should be running with 4 strikers. A squad should have 4 strikers, and we have one sort of striker that's half a makeshift striker. It makes no sense to me. But I can't believe we've got this far around the table before mentioning the left back position, because that's the glaringly the elephant in the room.
That was going to be mine.
Dennis was just waiting to say it. But it's clear that I think Arthur will be off. I think I don't know if his contract's running out or if he's just going. Yeah. But I know that he won't be with us next season. And I don't think we were stable enough with him in the team anyway. He was all right if we were playing with 3 at the back and he could get up and down a little bit. But it seems that we're more likely to be playing with 4 across the back anyway. And Cresswell, obviously fantastic servant to the club, but I think we just heaped a little bit too much on his shoulders last season, and he had a few wobbly moments, didn't he? And I think he probably cost us a little bit with his discipline, and he got away with a few as well, a few challenges where I was sort of like that.
Everton, for example.
Yeah. So I certainly think the left back position is the elephant in the room here, and that's where we need to be focusing aside from a striker.
Yeah, I mean, I'd argue that we with the exception of maybe right wing, I think we really need to sign someone everywhere on the pitch. If you think about it, especially if Vlasic we just talk of Benrahma going, there's talk of Vlasic going. So that's our left side wiped out pretty much. I mean, okay, you can play Fornells out there. He's not naturally left wing. Left back has been a problem. It's like the conundrum where obviously we've had a bit more stability recently. Cresswell plays well under Moyes. But when you go back to the both Bilic and Pellegrini, it was you have 2 games of Cresswell dropping for Masuaku. Eventually Masuaku comes in, has 1 good game. Then after a few games, now dropping for Cresswell. And it's been like that since we moved to the stadium, really. I think I always made the argument before with Cresswell that for he'll cost you 4 or 5 goals a season, but he'll get you 10 assists. This season is the season where that statement has been made a little bit irrelevant with his disciplinary. I still maintain the red card against Lyon was not a red card, but that's me. But the red card against Frankfurt was very much a red card. And as Jeff alluded to, he really probably got away with one against Everton with Richarlison. But again, you can look at centre-back. As soon as we lost Zuma and Ogbonna, and we looked all lost at sea and everything was reliant on Dawson. Right back, Johnson's a little bit ever so slightly on the injury-prone side, and Kufal wasn't quite the same this season. Centre mid, like Mark said, exactly, especially if Rice does eventually move on, because inevitably that likely will happen, sadly. And centre forward, we've needed to sign a centre forward arguably since before we've sold Sebastian Haller, and yet we haven't even really put a bid in for one. That I can't really think of us seriously bidding for a striker. We are make inquiries, or we tried FC, but but I would say out of all of those, though, I had to have to actually agree with Bill's first assessment in that we really need a striker this season, because Mickey barely got an injury last season and was knackered. We're not going to get that lucky with his injury, with his hamstrings this summer. And I don't see any of our youth strikers. There's talk of Sonny Perkins being moved on. I didn't personally think Perkins was ready for the first team, but I can't really see any of our youth strikers stepping up. And short of turning Souček into just an Andy Carroll style target man, I don't really know what else to suggest if Antonio gets injured at the minute. Because we need Bowen out wide as much as we do up top. We're losing Yarmolenko, so I think actually an out-and-out centre forward is the essential one. As much as I share your concerns with centre mid or left back.
I would. I'd also throw in, and I said centre midfield, but I'd also throw in goalkeeper. Obviously, Martin's been let go.
Legend.
And yeah, well, definitely. Obviously, Fabianski's 36, 37. Then I know he's got a new 1-year contract, but behind that, all that's left at the club obviously is Randolph at the moment, and I think it's fairly obvious that Moyes doesn't particularly see him as someone regularly challenging for the number 1 jersey. Obviously, not sure what's happening with Areola. Presumably, we're going to back. But
there's talk of there being competition now. Wages are a stumbling block, and as much as that can be frustrating, his wages are crazy at PSG.
Yeah, I know. I believe that PSG are playing a large chunk of his wage for the loan deal. So again, I think that becomes a position as well that we've got to make a decision there. Are we looking for someone to be a genuine number 2 to Fabianski next year, or are we looking at maybe someone who's actually going to be, similar sort of level, and basically Moyes turns around to him and says, right, you've got pre-season, fight it out for that position.
I mean, could it not be that perhaps, obviously we hear whispers on the training ground that obviously Trott is recognised as being a long-term Premier League goalkeeper or potential Premier League goalkeeper, and the Hungarian lad we got, which we beat off both Dortmund, Munich, and Atletico Madrid to sign, Hedgie, apparently is meant to be a generational talent in goal, likened to Petr Cech. Could it be that maybe we're hesitant to pull the trigger on a potential 5 to 10 year number 1 goalkeeper because we're holding out hope that one of these 2 good young keepers we've got might be a starter for us in 3 years' time? I know that's a little bit of a clutching on straws, but it's just another thing to consider, really.
Then we need to be into the loan market, don't we, and bringing in a decent goal,
or an experienced keeper that isn't going to cost us 180 grand a week like Areola potentially is.
Well, if it comes to it, I'd re-sign Areola on loan again.
That would make sense. Maybe that's not that's not on the table, because to me that the one thing time where I'll actually back David Sullivan's obsession with loans. I'll go, you know what? Yeah, David, you're right. No, I won't do the impression. But yeah, you're right. We will loan him. But maybe that's not an option. I think he might be out of contract next year, which could be why PSG are like, okay, we want to earn some of the money back. I'm pretty certain he's out of contract next year. Any other positions you want to give honourable mentions to, even if it may not be the main priority? I think we have.
I think we mentioned all the other positions. To be honest,
yeah, we don't want to back up manager just in case. Well, in that case, then actually, that's a perfect chance to move us on to topic number 2 for the day. That was our starter for 10. Now we're on to the main course. Now, to elaborate on the quote, because I could only fit so many words in. This window, do you feel that we should prioritize signing 5 quality players of, Jared Bowen levels of quality where possible, and rely on David Moyes to use the youth team to cover the rest of the squad? Or would you look for more realistic signings in order to fill the 8 to 10 squad places we need? Bearing in mind, we're not talking about the realisticness or our ability to sign 8 to 10 players. We are owned by David Gold and David Sullivan at the end of the day. But what if you were in that position? Where would your priorities be? Out of balance of fairness, I'm going to start with Jeff on this one.
Well, I think the first issue is that Moyes doesn't seem that keen on using youth and trusting the youth players anyway. But in the way you put the question, if it was me, then I would be wanting to bring in quality players and only quality players, because I think the years of us watching Marouane Chamakh and Roger Johnson.
I mean, I'm not talking that level. When I'm talking squad depth, I'm not talking that level. I'm talking,
for decades, we've plugged gaps with players who play that position but actually aren't good enough. So I think we finally actually moved past that now, and it took a very long time. So I wouldn't want to regress. I think if we could bring in 5 players of quality and then look to guys like Connor Coventry to come into the squad, Harrison Ashby. I don't know about Longello, whether he's there or not. Obviously, Sonny Perkins looks like he's going to be on the move. But it looks like finally we have got a couple of prospects coming through. I mean, I do think Ashby looked the part, to be honest, when he's played.
Very good against Spurs in the cup.
And yeah, ironically, he plays a position that we're pretty sorted on already with Sofau and Johnson. If only Ashby was a left back, eh?
I wouldn't Johnson to a left back.
I wouldn't be looking to bring in 10 people just for the sake of it. No, I think 5 plus youth would do it. That being said, some kind of experience depth at striker, so we did have 4 strikers, could be okay. But again, they don't have to be superstars. But I think we would need sort of a wily, experienced striker that could be in and around the squad. But aside from that, I would be looking at youth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, I've always subscribed. Really, you've got to look for quality over quantity. Ideally, the players you're looking to bring in are better than the players in your starting 11. That's in an ideal scenario. I always go back to the first season at the London Stadium. With giving it the bitty big one about how we was in the Europa League qualifying rounds, and we obviously had a brilliant season at the Boleyn, and we go out and sign, 10, 11, 12 players, however many it was, and they were worse than the players that we had in that.
I don't think we signed. I think people think we signed more than we actually. I think we actually only signed like 7 players, but it felt like 10 considering the deal that was made out of them.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I don't see the point in that. I think, as I say, I think you want the new signings coming in. You want them really to be ready to go straight into your starting 11, or at least be able to put better pressure on them players, not have players just cruising or getting complacent and thinking they're going to be starting, obviously every single week. I know that might be a bit unrealistic with West Ham, but I think that's what we should be trying to aim for now. We've had 2 really, really good seasons. And the other reason as well for me is that if we, I've seen some people talk about we need to sign 11 new players. My issue with that is that you're not going to integrate all of them 11 players in your team, in your squad during pre-season. It's going to be a long, drawn-out process. Them players clearly aren't all going to go into that first game or the first couple of games and are not all going to start. And then if they're being left out, you're then going to get plenty of unhappy players. The dressing room morale would drop dramatically, irrespective of how well we're doing in the games. So I just don't think that's realistic. As Jeff just mentioned there, we've got 2 or 3, exciting prospects. Obviously, we saw a few of them play in the Europa League, the last game against Zagreb at home in the the group stages. We've invested in our youth academy clearly for a few years, so why not have allowed a couple of them to try and push on and challenge for a place? It's for me, it's quality over quantity all day.
Good. And finally, Bill.
Yeah, totally agree with what Jeff and Mark have said. I still get nightmares about Simone Zaza and Gökhan Toure in the first season at the London Stadium. So that was the definition of getting quantity over quality, and that was obviously proven the following season. Most of them weren't at the club. So, I think the quality players, and as I completely agree with what Mark said, it's about the team sort of dynamic, not only on the pitch but off the pitch as well. If you look back in history over in the Premier League era, you look at teams like QPR and Sunderland about the summer transfer windows they've had where they've signed 9-10 players, and it just hasn't worked for the reasons I've said in terms of integrating all the players, but also players will be on such and such more money than maybe players that are already at the club, and it doesn't work. So I'd rather have to get the quality players in, rather than spend that money on there and then try and integrate the youth players in. I think we've mentioned earlier about Crowd playing 3 minutes of Premier League football. Well, I'm pretty sure Conor Coventry could take his role on the bench. He played League One football for MK. He played League One football for MK Dons. They didn't quite get promoted, but he played really well apparently. So, I think Jeff's right about the youth players not quite getting a chance under the boys. What I'd say to that is they have to be. We're a Europa League or Europa Conference League, European side now, so they have to be of that quality. It's very hard for them to really stand out unless you're like a Declan Rice or someone, which none of the other youth players are at that level at the moment. So, if we were a side that were 13th or 14th or whatever, I think some of the youth players would have got a lot more opportunities. But it's a bit of a step up from that level to European sort of level, which we are now. So, definitely I'd rather spend getting the best available players we can do, and we should be attracting those kind of players, especially as we're in Europe again.
So you go
Sorry,
ahead. You go.
Dennis, I was just going to say, just for sort of a kind of a bit of balance, what I was saying as well is the only way that I sort of feel that a quantity would ever work in a transfer window is if you are, a bit like what we saw with Newcastle a little bit this year, where you're down the bottom of the league and you are then in that situation. It's like we need to sign 5 or 6 players pretty rapidly to try and get us out of the situation that we're in. But
great escape getting Upson and Lucas Neal and all those players.
Yeah, great example. Definitely. I think
Upson's a poor example in the short term in that one, but yeah.
I mean,
we still bought him, Dennis.
Yeah,
I know. Well, he played like 40 minutes of football across 2 games.
All right, I'll throw in Callum Davenport then, just to make you happy.
Well, I was going to say, Phil, when you're talking,
the only reason I'd look at the quantity thing if you were that, in a situation like that and you're desperate. But I think clearly after the last 2 seasons that we've had, we're not in that situation, and I think it's got to be quality for me.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I could have worded it a bit better, but what I meant was, for example, would you have taken some quality signings and one with some what I call stopgap signings? This is a conversation I had with one of our mutual friends before a West Ham game, such as look at the free transfer market. Would you take? I know he's on the verge of signing for Everton, but say Tarkowski on a free transfer for 2 years, but then next summer spend big on another top quality centre back alongside Zuma, for example, was the kind of squad building I was talking about. But I think we are going to be unanimous because I would, my opinions changed in the last couple of weeks. Before I was very much, no, we've got 5 people leaving. We're already 4 players short. We need to sign 9 Premier League quality players, even if it's just stopgap. Actually thinking about it, I would much prefer to spend our money this summer on the spine of a team. So a good goalkeeper, a good centre-back to partner Zuma, or it's that way if Zuma and Ogbonna are injured again, then Dawson has someone good to play with rather than Diop, and less said about Diop, the better. A central midfielder to replace/challenge Souček and Rice so they don't get complacent, and a centre-forward to compete with Mickey. So that's 4 signings, and then any other quality signing on top of that would be a bonus. And if there's a free transfer or a loan to pick up anywhere in between to help fill out the squad, great. If not, Coventry, before he left Perkins, and Ashby, Baptiste and Alessi could be plenty enough to fill out the bench. But I don't trust Moyes to use any of them, really, if I'm honest with you, unless it's an absolute emergency. He only threw on Perkins when we were chasing a goal against Leeds. Other than that, none of those players have had a look in the league. So it's kind of a redundant question thinking about it, because Moyes historically has never really given you a chance, sadly, at any, with the exception of about 5 minutes at Everton. And the other caveat I was going to say, Bill, is the big problem with Sunderland bulk signing players is because they had an obsession with signing Danny Graham for no apparent reason, which most Premier League clubs looking to build always end up signing Danny Graham for no apparent reason, despite him being an average Championship striker.
So he got 15 goals one season in the Prem for Swansea, but it's a West Ham. Okay. This is a West Ham show, but but I think I agree with you in stopgap signings in certain positions. If it's a 1 or 2, I would agree with that. However, you look at Man United strikers over the past 3 or 4 seasons; they've all been stopgap, and look where because it's not sustainable. And look at Igalo they had for Cristiano Ronaldo, Edison Cavani. Not sustainable. And obviously, all stopgap signings in one position. So if it was maybe a combination of positions and just 1 or 2, then I wouldn't mind that. If they had sufficient Premier League experience, I'd be like, okay, I'll take a punt on 1 or 2 players, but I wouldn't fill my whole squad with them. No.
Oh no, I'm not talking. Sorry, this is amateurness. I probably haven't worded the question properly. Sorry, what I meant was 5 quality signings and stopgaps, or 5 quality signings and relying on youth. Sorry. But yeah, so I'm probably going to go along the lines of spending that extra bit of money on quality signings and then seeing what the budget is next year, rather than spending 25% of budget on stopgap players. And then it's up to Moyes to use youth players, because these, look at James Tompkins when he set through. He wasn't anywhere near ready. Everyone was saying, yet he had a brilliant debut against Derby under Kerbishley and never really looked back from there. But on this, so again, we can caveat into the next section, which is based on about, again, 1,000 Twitter accounts, I keep saying, that keep linking us with random players that I've never heard of, and I play Football Manager extensively, that are bargains and must signings because of their press and XG. But what would you describe as, obviously, I'm not saying this, but if obviously without saying Lionel Messi or Mbappe, but what would your dream signing for West Ham be this window? And what would be your realistic alternative? So obviously, when I'm saying dream signing, I'm not talking about the best player in the world, but which player do you think would be absolutely perfect for the way the project that Dave Moyes is trying to build? And what would the more realistic alternative be, would you say?
Who's going first? Mark going first?
I'll let Mark go first on this one. Yes, one first before. Should have said that.
That's a tough one to answer, I think, really. I think looking at who we've been linked with and knowing obviously how much Moyes wants him. I think probably the dream one for Moyes would probably be Lingard. Although if the reports are to be believed, then, that deal sadly isn't going to happen. Obviously, he was fantastic for us before. 6 goals, whatever it was, 9 assists, etc. Alternatively, he's going to be looking for someone who's similar to that. I'll be honest. I don't really know enough of the players that are out there in terms of, apart from sort of more, like the up and coming players type thing. Probably the most closest in terms of that type of player for me, I think he's still on the free transfer. He's Eriksen. Obviously done for
what a shout! What a shout!
Brentford. I think he's fair. Obviously, absolutely horrific what happened to him in the Euros, and for him to be able to be still here in the first place, I think is fantastic. So to him to then be playing in the Premier League regularly and performing as well to a high level, and I think it's probably fair to say that he made a big difference to Brentford. It's clear that he would improve our team by tenfold. I think, especially in that attacking area, sort of decision makings, and I think probably take our set pieces as well onto another level. My only doubt with that is, obviously the draw for him probably maybe going back to Tottenham, and obviously being an ex-Tottenham player. I'm not entirely convinced that our fan base would accept an ex-Tottenham player coming into the team. But yeah, that's what I think.
Okay, Bill?
Yeah, well, I think obviously in terms of the striking department, I think the players we've been linked with are actually all realistic. So it's hard to say of a dream one. I think one who would, a couple of the Watford players would I think fit our system either as a striker or as an inverted winger would be Emmanuel Dennis and Ismail Assar. I think they've Emmanuel Dennis scored 10 Premier League goals for Watford, which is very good because in Watford they obviously got relegated. They were pretty terrible. Don't actually create that many chances. So for him to get 10 goals, fair play to him. So I think he'd be a good addition. Obviously, Brozier, from he was on loan at Southampton from Chelsea. I think he looked pretty impressive, especially at the start of the season. But again, Southampton don't score a lot of goals as well, so it's hard to judge him at a team like that. But I think with the chance that we create in our attacking, wingers and attacking midfielders, I think with and Aaron Cresswell's crosses from left back, I think he'd thrive on that. But in terms of centre midfield, I think for me the dream signing would be James Ward-Prowse. I'd try. We've been linked with him, and I would move heaven and earth to try and sign him. But I think he's got, he probably have a high. I don't know if he's got a release clause, but he'd cost.
They reckon 75 million is.
So I think that would be. I can't see us paying obviously anywhere near that, but I think he's he had a great season with Southampton. He's getting better all the time. England international now. Obviously, don't get me wrong, his free kicks and set pieces are fantastic, but he's got a lot more to his game than that. His energy around the pitch, his passing, and as I say, he's reaching the prime of his career now. And that's the type of signing that we should try and make. But apart from that, I think if we can get him, I think we've been with Basuma, surprisingly, from Brighton. I'm surprised that Brighton would actually prepared to let him go.
I think there's a reason Brighton are looking to move him on. Probably not something to say without being done for liable. But I believe there's a reason they're trying to move him on.
Yeah, of course, but still, though, he's still very obviously very good player.
Yes.
His tackling is very good, and you don't play in a Graham Potter side if you can't pass the ball. So
absolutely,
I think if we obviously it's just slightly different players, but if we couldn't get Ward-Prowse, I think I'd be more than happy with Basuma.
Yep, and Basuma again might be the more realistic option because I think, as I said, Brighton are actively looking to move him on, which means his asking price would be a lot less. Yeah. I believe it could be X on his podcast. I believe touched on this that he was on our radar as well. Jeff, mate, is there any other names you want to throw out there?
There is. Of all the names that I've seen touted around, I think the absolute dream signing would be Belotti. I think he plays with his heart on his sleeve. He's powerful. He's direct. He can hit it with both feet. I think he'd be a fantastic striker for us. He's prolific, and so that would be the dream signing. And then the more realistic signing, and I don't know how realistic it actually is, but would be Brozier, like Bill said. If he can go out on loan and play football at Southampton, then I'm sure he'd be at home with us. He'd get a lot more service in our team, I believe, with the creative players that he'd have around him. But yeah, I think I don't know what it would take to get a player like Belotti over the line, but that would be the dream.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the names that have been put out there are brilliant. The one exception I'm taking from very reliable sources that Emmanuel Dennis, if people get on Antonio's back, my God, you've not seen nothing till you get on Dennis's back. I've witnessed him play live twice, and for about a good 50 minutes of the game, he was just walking around with his hands on his hips, hogging the right wing. He's a bit like Charizard. Like he when he wants to play, he's bloody brilliant, but he just has serious attention problems and would always just misplace passes, not run for a ball and let it go out for a throw in to the other team and things like that. Very frustrating. But when he's on, he's absolutely electric. So if David Moyes can get that out of him, absolutely. But it's whether we can. A couple of names that have been, or a name that's been thrown out there that I've actually changed my mind on a lot in the last 3 months. And it's not realistic, but I think a striker or winger turned striker that I think is exactly the type of player Moyes would love is actually at his former club of Everton, and it's Richarlison. Now, I've been quite critical of Richarlison from the things I've heard of him at Watford, but the performances he's put in for Everton under Lampard in the last 2-3 months, I think in Moyes' side, alongside Bowen and maybe a Benrahma, that'd be mental. Absolutely mental. But I don't see us signing him because he'll probably cost us upshot of £80 million. He was linked with Barcelona the other year. A more realistic signing, I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation on this, but it's a former Liverpool striker. He's playing out in Union Berlin called Tayo Oweyini. He's, again, like very quick, very technical striker, scored 14 goals in the Bundesliga last year. We could probably pick him up for about 15-20 million pounds. Vice versa, Mohamed Bayo in the French league, likened very much to Michail Antonio in his style of play, I think, again, could be a very good, more affordable and realistic option to Richarlison. But I'm also going to go with Bill in that James Ward-Prowse would be fantastic, and I think Basuma would be a very, very good alternative. The one thing I'd say with Belotti, Jeff, is I used to absolutely hate when people say this, but in recent years I've come around saying it, is again, he very, very well and good him doing it in Serie A, but would it be adaptable to the Premier League? Would he be adaptable to the way we play? We've seen so a certain centre forward be prolific in European leagues, struggle for us, and then go over to another European league and score hat-tricks in the Champions League. So it doesn't
every video.
I haven't said him. I haven't said his name.
But yeah,
we know who you're talking about, Dennis.
We'll call him Seb H. No, that's too obvious.
No, Dennis, you said hello earlier in the video. There's enough point not saying his name now, is it?
I don't think I did, but anyway.
His face will just go strolling across on the banner at the
bottom. with a halo, and then later with devil horns after it. But yeah, there's lots of things. I mean, again, but who's to say James Ward-Prowse isn't unrealistic though? Because okay, the price tag may be, but Southampton, they've not exactly pulled up any trees of late. They've always had potential to mix it up. If he puts in a transfer request or things like that, a few clubs could come in for him, and why not West Ham? We're getting to that level where players like that could come to us.
But it might be Dennis, where it might be unrealistic if Champions League clubs go after him.
Yeah. But I'm saying that it's a player that I think we could sign, James Ward-Prowse, if Southampton could somehow lower their fee. I'm not sure they would. And similar to Brozier as well, could be the opposite, in that Chelsea may turn around and ask for loads of money because of his youth and the fact that he's going to progress better. But
my issue with Ward-Prowse is that why hasn't? Don't get me wrong, I think he's a fantastic footballer. My issue is why hasn't anyone moved for him before now? He's played Premier League about the last 5-6 seasons, I think, roughly now.
I believe United went for him a couple of years ago under Mourinho.
But did they make a serious bid? There's one thing.
I think it was more they asked for him, and Southampton said, "Okay, we want this," and they're like, "Oh, all right, okay, see you later."
So I think then, based on that, he might have to force a move, and I sort of get 26, 27.
Yeah.
So you would wonder why he hasn't forced the move. It could just be that he's happy playing where he is at Southampton, especially if they maintain Premier League status. And the lad Broja that you mentioned, the Chelsea centre forward. Again, my issue with that would be is that would Chelsea really be prepared to let him go to a team? I'm not being funny. We've almost considered to be a rival now. If we were to, think where we were for most of the season was in that Champions League mix for a large chunk, would they be prepared to let him go to a team like ourselves? Especially because if you think how bad Lukaku was for most of last season, would they be looking to get him into our first team? Into their first team, I mean.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, so even some of these more realistic signings, I mean, you got to take into account you're talking about Basuma being a bargain at 25 million. How many players have we signed for 25 million in our lifetime? Like 4, 5.
Your mate, hello.
Well, yeah. But so Anderson,
Carroll.
No, Carroll was like 18 million.
18, wasn't it?
Yeah. There's another one I'm missing. I think Ayew was up to 25 after installments. But other than that, I'm struggling to think because like Diop was 22, Benrahma was 22, Bowen was like 18 again. I'm struggling to think of too many. Zuma's another one. But other than that, we're struggling to think of players that we spent that much money on. We're talking about 25 million being the more realistic bargain side of it. So let's just hope we have got the funding that certain websites claimed we had before we had season ticket renewals, which always is the case.
Sorry, someone who has just come to my mind, I think we've been linked with before, is the lad at Blackburn. Ben.
Brereton. He would be available on a free transfer this window.
Maybe that's more realistic.
There's question marks over his ability to transform that into Premier League because I think he only scored 1 goal in the second half of the season.
Which
he was played out wide for them as well.
My other thing is, well, obviously, and playing devil's advocate a little bit, we don't know how much money Moyes is going to be given for his transfer kitty, and it could well be that a free transfer, especially I think we sort of kind of all agreed earlier that centre forward is probably, if you were given a choice, is probably the one place that we definitely need. Maybe that should be the player that we look at.
I mean, I wouldn't say no to Brereton on a free transfer so long as we bring in another attacker alongside him. For that way, it minimises the risk of signing someone for free that's only scored 1 goal in 6 months. But yeah, I think he's certainly talented. He's very quick, is Brereton. But on that subject of signing people and value for money, obviously we've been talking about, we've mentioned the L word that is Jesse Lingard. There's lots of debate on Twitter about how much wages he's asking for, reportedly asking for 150 to 180,000 pound a week. So my question is outside a transfer, so you can't add this onto someone's wage, where would you like the club to invest the best part of £1 million a month on in the coming season? So this could be something like reducing ticket prices, more facilities at the stadium, transport links from the station to the ground. Where would you feel where would you like to see the club invest a little bit more money that they would invest by not giving this money to Jesse Lingard, basically? Feel free to have a free fall and start whenever you like.
If you don't mind me jumping in there, chaps, the training ground, please, the training ground. Spend the money at the training ground. Let's get that up to scratch.
Let's get those get rid of those porta cabins, yeah.
Before we think about anything else, I think that would be the priority for me. I mean, we talk about attracting quality players, and then Rush Green doesn't really represent where a quality player would probably be looking to learn their trade and improve. So that would be the main one for me. I've got dragged into a bit of a discussion on Twitter about this, but I don't particularly think overall, if it was the 100, maybe 180 is a stretch, but 150 a week on Lingard isn't completely unreasonable if he's coming on a free anyway, because it's not half different to spending 15 to 20 million on a player and paying them 90 grand a week. The value of that deal over 3 or 4 years remains the same. So
Oh yeah, no, I'm not saying this to discount whether he had come or not, whether we'd given the money or not. It's more just because I saw another debate of where this money could be spent on Twitter, which sort of inspired this question of, I'd like to see, instead of throwing money at a player on a free transfer that doesn't want to, in their view, didn't want to come, where should we spend it? And then it was, I'd throw it on Weiss's wages, which then began how would the squad feel about a player being given basically a 300% pay rise? And it went from there. So that's sort of where we are now. Mark, where would you like to see it spent?
Yeah, I think Jeff's spot on with the training ground. I think if you look at some of the other ground, teams have invested in recent years, like Leicester and there we say at Tottenham, their training grounds are first class, and ours just looks like nothing better than a park facility, especially with the porter cabin. I think sort of adding something more onto the debate. I think maybe clearly the stadium still does need to be sorted out. I think they're trying to do that, aren't they, with the rounding or the squaring off of the seats. But I don't know if you've seen it for the playoff final that was there. I mean, that was absolutely shocking. Where that was
it did a little bit Tim Pod, didn't it?
Yeah, it was, and I don't know if how much control we've got over that as a club, but I think that definitely needs to be sorted out. The squaring off and trying to bring the fans a little bit nearer to the pitch, because you guys obviously know better than me. You're season ticket holders, or at least go fairly regularly. But I think it's obvious this year that the atmosphere in that ground has been first class, has been different class this year, and some of that obviously helped with bringing the Trevor Brookings stand. The Bobby Moore stand a little bit further forward with and I think that's made a difference. And I think they need to look at doing that, because let's make it a proper home. We've seen what we can do. Let's get that on a regular basis.
Bill?
Yeah, totally agree with the lads about the stadium and the training ground. I think Mark mentioned Leicester City and their owners. I think they treat the fans properly. So in terms of I'm sure that money could be used for free scarves for certain games for every fan, or a free pint, like free drink token or something like that. I don't think that'd be wouldn't go amiss. I think possibly reducing some of the match day tickets. I mean, I'm okay because I'm in band 5, but band 1 for a normal match day is like 80 quid or whatever, which is a little bit ridiculous. So I'm sure that it could be used for to reduce the match tickets for certain games as well.
Yeah, I'm going to go bleeding heart lefty here and say that I think match day tickets should definitely be reduced. I think it's the working man's game, and no matter how shiny the stadium is, it should be affordable for people to go to if they're going to spend their hard-earned money to. Another thing is a little bit, again, me being a bit touch of the heart, but one thing that's really disgusted me recently, and it's not just I don't actually know the price of the children's kits for West Ham, but I know a big debate was made about Spurs, is the fact that the prices are rising more and more for children's kits. And you think about it, who wants kits more? It's going to be your kids. I haven't got any kids, but people's kids saying, I want to get a little kit for my boy. He's 4. He wants his name and number on the back, and it ends up costing the parent about 120 quid because kids want the full kit and stuff like that. And I think it's a little bit. I'm not too bothered about the shirt prices as an adult. I'll pay the price if I want to buy one. But I think another thing, there should be a subsidy for example, even if they just want to do it for season ticket holders, for just half price on kids' kits, because I think it's outrageous that fans are fleeced like that. So I would put it there, but I also do have to echo the thing about the training ground, because I remember Nathan Holland saying that Oxford training pitches were better than West Ham in 2019, and that was pretty damning. That was brought up a lot when just before the pandemic, when the big GSB marches are going out. It was that quote from Nathan Holland being like, training at Oxford United, it feels like I'm training at an actual football ground or football team, rather than I think he compared the training ground to Legoland or something like that. It's something ridiculous. No doubt he hasn't got a new contract after that, because But yeah, I remember seeing somebody who compared it to Legoland.
There's just to add on to what you said about the kids kits and that. I think they should also have no one should have to pay to be a mascot.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that goes across football really. And that's another thing about modern football that I absolutely hate. but yeah, definitely on that.
Is that signing up to be one next year, Bill? Or
Well, it's outrageous. I think we're one of the highest in the league. I think of it in terms of how much we charge.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Pathetic, really.
But again, across the board, across all of Premier League and professional football, things like that, like there's a cost of living crisis going on, and prices are going up, and I think the shirts are more expensive. West Ham shirts are more expensive this year than last year. I think I haven't actually looked at the prices, just feedback on Twitter. But it's just, for example, saw a guy on Twitter saying that it's going to cost him hundreds of pounds to get his 3 kids kits, but it's what he knows they will want it for Christmas, and it's kind of guilting the fans into letting your kids down or having a huge hole in your credit card. What do you do? And I don't think as a alleged family-run club we should be doing that.
No, agree. Yeah, I'm myself got a young kid, so agree there on the kit price. I think it's not just West Ham. I think it's across the game now. I did see someone did say that it produces like £5 for them to make a shirt. I don't know how true that is, and yet I think this season the home shirt's £65. Is it? And that's a huge.
Yeah. Well, that's all.
Huge a lot.
Increase.
Not that I like to compare ourselves to Spurs, but I remember seeing at Spurs they also sell the official. There's the replica, and then there's like the performance kit for like £100. I'm like, who would buy that? What's the difference? Surely, like replica kits are just remake. Or I always used to think we're just extra stock of the playing kit. But anyway, anything more anyone wants to add on this subject, or we'll move on to sort of closing comments?
No, I think there's quite a lot of money could go towards.
Yeah,
even more than we haven't probably mentioned.
Yeah, like there's
loads. Lingard.
There's that as well, or there'll be someone in the comments being like, "Oh, we can sign this player from the Asgardian Third League. He's 14 goals from 7 shots on target, and from centre back." But anyway, add in the comments anything you feel we've missed or any bargains you feel I've missed. We will be looking at the comments and checking them and maybe reviewing them in future. But other than that, is there anything anyone wants to add before we say goodbye? Really,
West Ham.
Yeah.
West Ham.
Glad to be back and having this, back on this channel. It's been a long time since we've all sat here and talk football, really, isn't it? So
I felt lost the last 3 weeks without any football. I don't know what I'm doing from day to day.
Yeah,
shame we haven't got a World Cup, FIFA.
I just hope Rob Newman's got a load of names on his list for every position.
But yeah, well, we say that, but ultimately, sadly, Rob Newman's not the decision maker. It's going to be Moyes and the board, so they might have other ideas. But on that bombshell, I will bid you adieu. Come on, you Irons.
Come on, you Irons.
Come on, you Irons.
Don't let us down, Jeff. There we are. See you later.
Come on, you Irons.